Today I want to talk about liminal space. First, the context. The world as we know it in the West, especially in the United States, is so more complex, uncertain, ambiguous, and volatile than anyone can ever figure it out. And so think of yourself. You look at the news and you see economic uncertainty, regulatory uncertainty, political uncertainty, even global geopolitical uncertainties around peace. What's going to happen with our world? It's ecological uncertainty. And when we're faced with uncertainty, when we're faced with constant change and complexity, our sense of self is challenged. The ego, which is the sense of self, does not like these circumstances. So there's one of two things that can happen. There can be a breakdown and a collapsing into artificial comfort zones, or there can be a breakthrough and catalyzing into a new, more expanded, more resilient way of being. And Rick and Amy Simmons from the Telos Institute wrote a book called Unleashed, where they talk about the power of liminal spaces. Liminal spaces are basically any time when we're faced with an unknowing, there's a space between what we knew and what we're becoming, the old ways of doing things and the new ways of doing things or seeing things. We're in a liminal space, meaning we don't know what's going to happen. There's some sort of setback or challenge or overwhelm or crisis where it's not a simple fix or a simple day business as usual. And so liminal spaces, they happen to us all the time, whether it's we lose a job or a death of a loved one or all the things I described of like uncertainty around the economy, for example. When our supply chain suddenly disappears overnight or becomes 3 times more expensive. And there's no handbook, there's no best practices, there's no here's what to do. And so the best way to face it so that it becomes a breakthrough and a catalyst is through intentional practice. So what does that look like? Well, as I said, it's between the old story of what I believe to be true. Let's use the example of I've lost my job. So, in other words, there's the old job I had and the old identity. Let's say I'm a salesperson, and I had a job, and I felt good about myself. I have all these customers. I have relationships that feed me every day that I can work with. I have contacts. I have a whole daily routine of reaching out to different people. I have my spiel. I have my knowledge and my devotion to the brand and the company. And then suddenly, all of that is thrown out the window. Suddenly, I don't have the company, the brand, the loyalty, the relationships, daily practice, the sense of I feel good about myself because I'm doing all this thing and I'm making money for the company. All that disappears overnight. Let's say I lose my job. I'm in a liminal space. We can take that as a problem and try as quickly as possible to get back to the way things were. So maybe I look for the same kind of job at the same kind of company and just immediately try to plug back in. And I send 1,000 resumes out and just plug back in to the same way that things used to be. And if that works, and if I get a job right away, then maybe that's great. That's actually not a liminal space. I can just glide into my future and continue things as usual, business as usual. But the most likely case is that you'll send those first 100 applications and resumes, and you may get bites here and there, but you keep putting in so much effort. You get interviews here and there, and it doesn't quite work out. Certainly not any simple way. And so you start to ask the questions of like, from being, this is what I know, to what do I know? Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. This is all the things I can do, to what can I do? Maybe there's other ways of doing it. This is who I am, a professional identity, to who am I? What do I really want? What can I really do? What if the way I've been doing things actually was a limited way of doing things? What if I can do more? What if I can be a sales consultant or a success manager or customer service? What if all of those are actually a function of my identity too? So what happens is we have the default mode network. That's what the neuropsychologists talk about. The default mode network is the set of connections in the brain, neural connections, that make up our default way of being and making sense of the world and taking action every day. I get up in the morning and my default mode comes back together, and this is who I am. This is my daily routine, my practice, my whatever I do. Well, when we're in liminal space, that default mode network is challenged, and if we allow it to open up and actually suspend itself, it can start to look for other ways of configuring itself. So we want to be in a new possibilities, a state of unknowing, of curiosity, of what if, of imagination, of taking stock. What don't I know? And then when the default mode network comes back together, most likely, if we're growing, it'll come back together in a more complex configuration of connections. More nodes in the brain will connect to more nodes elsewhere in the brain. And that is called growth. And it requires, like I said, humility, curiosity. And we have Otto Sharmer, who coined the term theory U from MIT. He proposed a model of transformation that's a very simple but profound process of transformation. Basically, it's in the shape of a U, or shape of a U like this. So it starts off with everything I am today. And we open our mind to new possibilities. We open our heart to new ways of feeling and being. And we open our willpower to new ways of acting. And where we can open each of these places in us, each of these ways of knowing, we get to the bottom of the U, to pure possibility, pure potential. And we rest in that place. We allow ourselves to let go of what needs to be let go, so that we can let come what needs to come. And if we try to skip over this bottom of the U too quickly, we'll actually just go back to the way that we started. And so it's really important when we're at the bottom of the U to be fully open in this transformative process, to allow enough time and space so that we can rest in the stillness, the silence, the unknowing, the possibility. And out of that spaciousness, it will arise possibilities, inklings, deep desires, longings, new ideas, new ways of thinking, new ways of believing, new ways of integrating information, a new sense of what's mine to do and what's not mine to do, what's mine to control and what's mine to let go of. Where is my energy drawing me to take action next? We're in deep listening. And then we step into the other side of the U when we begin to take steps and actions. We test the waters, we try new things, we iterate new possibilities, and slowly get clearer and clearer of, this is the new way of being. This is my new sense of self. This is my new default mode network. This is my new story. And so I've been able to let go of the old story and then let come a new story. It's a theory U process. And liminal space is part of that. Now, how does this relate to vertical development, which is my specialty in leadership maturity coaching? Well, When we develop vertically through different stages of development, what we're really talking about is we grow like an acorn becomes a sapling, becomes a tree. We grow in new stages of knowing and being. We grow through new stories of what it means to be human and what the world is. So an earlier story is, I'm a conformist. My purpose is to fit in and follow along, not make waves. So I'm going to do what everyone else around me is doing. My people. But when we let that go, and when that suddenly becomes stifling and too much to hold on to, we let it go, and we open up to the next stage, which is the skill-centric or the expert stage. And we realize, oh, who I am, the story of who I am is actually, I'm an expert. I know things, and what I do is who I am. So I'm going to be the best at what I'm meant to do. My expertise, my set of skills and capacities in a very narrow area. And at some point that becomes stifling again, like, oh, it's not enough. And then I expand it through liminal space to a new way of knowing, to the next stage, which is the achiever or the self-determining or self-authoring stage, where I can write my own story within a larger context beyond a narrow, predetermined set of skills or expertise based on authority figures and best practices. I actually can create new practices. I can make my own path. I can look beyond my expertise and see larger systems and start to see longer term, like longer term future and past. But even then, it usually is confined to kind of exterior measurable metrics of success and of being. And what is real is what my behaviors are, what I do, and what I create, the impact and the results that I make in the world. At some point, though, if we continue to grow and we find liminal space, we start to realize that these don't drive me anymore. This doesn't work for me anymore. I don't want to continue to create these results which don't conform to a larger set of values or principles or something meaningful. It's not meaningful anymore. And so the next stage, whether it's called pluralistic or self-questioning or individualist stage or catalyst stage, we look at, actually, there's way more going on here. There's an interior within myself. There's an interior with others. So how do I connect with others and help facilitate the emergence of more humanity, wholeness, meaning, value, like true, authentic value, what really matters in this world. I start to look at my identity being more connected to a larger sense of systems and of a larger set of stakeholders and beings that are valid in my understanding in my heart. And so as a catalyst, I can step in and actually foster transformation, foster exploration and introspection in many others, and oftentimes look at the longer term perspective and see how can we make the entire system more effective and transformed and sustainable over the long haul instead of just the next quarterly profits. How can we make sure that profits as well as people and the planet thrive over the course of not just the quarter or the year or even 5 years, but 10, 15 years. So the catalyst has a story, a new story after a liminal space of unknowing that actually incorporates more. So vertical development is a process that occurs when we step into liminal spaces and come out the other side with a new story, a new way of being, a new way of doing and acting in the world. This leaves me with one question for you. When do you reach liminal spaces, and how do you respond when you're in liminal space? Do you respond with going back to what you already know, creating artificial comfort zones, controlling for your environment? Or do you move forward and lean into the discomfort, the unknowing, the possibility, looking for new ways, new possibilities. In any case, I wish you well on your journey. May you continue to evolve and discover more possibilities of what it means to be human in a world where it's drenched with meaning, purpose, and experience of radical aliveness in your very being.